Welcome to the Smart Publishing Impact Series, where we show you how to turn your expertise into a book that actually drives results. I'm Jonathan Lautermilch, CEO of Smart Publishing.
And I'm Renée Lautermilch, Chief Editor of Smart Publishing. This is the podcast for business owners, coaches, and professionals who don't just want to be authors. They want to use a book to build authority, attract clients, and create real opportunities.
Each week, we break down what actually works when it comes to writing, publishing, and leveraging a book the right way. Sometimes it's just us pulling back the curtain on our process. Other times we're joined by authors, industry experts, sharing how they've used a book to grow their business. If you've ever thought about writing a book, or you already have one and want it to do more for you, you're in the right place. Let's get into it.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Smart Publishing Impact Series. I am one of your co-hosts, Renée Lautermilch, Chief Editor at Smart Publishing, and I'm your only person today. Today is a solo episode. We don't have any guests on. We do have some exciting upcoming releases, though. Next week on Tuesday, Dr. Karina Tan will be dropping Lead Like Water, so watch out for that. Really, really awesome book. And then we've got a few more in the hopper coming up, and then we've got books getting scheduled coming up every single week. So we're going to have some really exciting releases this August leading into September. We'll be scheduling more for October. So really throughout the rest of the year, it's going to be a really good time. So today is episode 73, and Jonathan and I were talking earlier, what do you talk about when you've kind of talked about everything at length? But we like to, when we don't have guests on, we like to go the route of, what's kind of like a current trend or thing that we're seeing, or sort of a conversation that we find ourselves having over and over again, because the chances are, if it's something that we are experiencing, then it's something that, other people may have questions about or may need to hear on this topic. And the topic, as you can see for today, is anything worth doing is worth doing right. So we find this on a couple fronts. We talk to plenty of people every single week, and a lot of the same themes come up. One of those is, people who they're either doing a re-release, they're doing a second book release, or they're looking to do a first release. And we see, I guess, excitement and enthusiasm sometimes get people a little bit carried away to where the execution of the book is not going to serve them. And so I think that that's something that's really important, because a book is a big project. Once you publish a book, it's out there. I've had a few people who have previous books ask about the process for taking their books down. And, it's a lengthy process. You can't just go and reuse an ISBN. So it's pretty sticky once you publish a book. And, if it's meant to be a credibility booster, which most of the time in nonfiction it really is, there are some things that can get you in trouble and sort of turn that around on its head to where it's actually doing more to undermine your credibility than it is to build your credibility. I've talked about these at length before, but I want to talk about them now in a bit of a different context. And of course, we continue to circle back to this because it is so important, and we just see so many people making the same mistakes over and over again. And we want to reach as many of those people as possible and stop them before, possibly you might be looking at making that mistake. So, the first thing is the premise of today's episode. Anything worth doing is worth doing right. I know it can be really exciting, especially if you're a first-time author, to get a book out there. I know after you've worked on it for a while, you can get in this mood where you just want to get it out there, but hear me really clearly. How you feel should not dictate how you execute. 9 times out of 10, when you allow that to happen, the what happens, the consequence from that is not a good consequence. It doesn't lead to good execution. Just like leading with your feelings in a conversation, a heated conversation with someone probably doesn't lead to good results. Leading with your feelings in publishing a book also does not lead to good results. It leads to hasty decision making, rushed production processes, lack of a launch plan, and all the things that lead towards you being really disappointed in the results. So if it was worth doing up to this point, then it's worth doing the right way. And you just need to take a breath, step back, and think about how you will best represent yourself in the marketplace through the quality of what you produce, and a launch plan and a continuing leverage plan that will make sure that you're leveraging the book in the way that you would like it to be leveraged. In which case, if you haven't thought about that, then that's something you need to go back and think about. Honestly, we tell people all the time, you need to have that clear before you ever even enter into writing a book. What do you want the book to do for the reader? What do you want the book to do for you? If you haven't answered those yet, you should have answered those at the onset, but it's never too late. Go ahead and answer those questions now, because it could greatly refine or update the current state of your book. One of the areas that we see a haphazard approach is in the publishing materials themselves. So you need a professional editor. And let me stress this. Claude and ChatGPT are not professional editors. They are not humans. I have run multiple tests with them. They make all kinds of oversights. They make all kinds of errors. And without the sort of unique lens of a human being, there are things that they just miss because they are not a human being. They also tend to put most everything into the same type of writing style, which people are savvy. They are coming to be able to identify that writing style when they see it. And so people can discern a book that has been processed through AI through one that has been professionally edited. So that's very important, because professional editing is always going to make you stand above the rest and make you look more professional than something that has been AI processed is going to do more to undercut your reputation and undercut your credibility. So if you're trying to establish credibility, the book can actually do the opposite for you. It can actually be something that is more harmful than helpful when you don't do it right, because now you've got something out there that is a representation of you that is not a good that is not a good representation. And then it makes people think like, well, if they did a haphazard job on this, or they cut corners on this, what is working with them going to be like? I'm not going to take this person seriously. So the same thing with interior formatting. Interior formatting is that interior layout and design of your book. Having someone who knows how to professionally do that can make a world of a difference in how your book actually looks when people go through it and people read it. There are just some stylistic and some formatting tricks that just make something look like it is from a front, bestsellers bookshelf, in the front of a major book retailer. And it's not that crazy to have done. You just need to find someone who knows what they're doing, because it is a very detail-oriented process. It's almost as detail-oriented as editing itself, where, oftentimes they're not necessarily going line by line with everything, but they're going paragraph by paragraph with everything and making sure everything's consistent and the design is really stand out and looks really good and really professional. And then, of course, the cover design too. People can tell a cover that has been designed by AI. We have authors who come through that really want to use AI images and things like that. And I discourage that as much as I can. We have a real designer on our team who designs actual things the way that they used to be designed before AI image generation hit the market. So, people can tell, people can see it from a mile away. It cheapens the look of your book when you use it. Also, when you're designing for these platforms, paperback, hardcover, there are very specific design specifications that they need to meet in order to have a proper print on your book. And there's something called full bleed, where it goes to the corner without any kind of banding, like white band around. You need to design a little bit larger than your trim size to meet that. And then there's, of course, your spine. Based on the amount of pages your book has, the spine is going to change in size. Now, I know that in Amazon KDP, there's something called Cover Creator. You're not going to get it's easy to use. You're not going to get a top-notch looking design out of that. We recently did a cover update for an author who is doing a little bit of a relaunch, and it made a world of a difference in how the book looks once it's printed. It looks like a true professional custom designed cover, so you do not want to skimp on that. So those are all the things that you don't want to rush or you don't want to haphazard. If you are self-publishing, you need to hire at least 3 professionals to do those things. Sometimes 2 professionals, because there are people who do both cover design and interior formatting. Just make sure they're actually good at both and they're not really good at one and so okay at the other. Again, it's your book. It's your first impression for a lot of people who are going to come in contact with you for the first time. You want to lead with your best foot forward. So have it done the right way. Now, the second thing that we've been seeing a lot is people who are like, yeah, well, I've got my whole manuscript and stuff. And yeah, I think I'm just going to publish it next week. That is a big one that we see. People who get sort of to the end of things and then they just want to get it out there. They have zero launch plan in place. They have done zero marketing for the book. And let me tell you, marketing is more than just putting a post on social to let people know when it's released. Okay, that is not a proper book launch. And, people who have really zero idea of how they're going to leverage the book on an ongoing basis. So we have seen that the best results come from a strategic 6-week launch plan. You need a 6-week launch plan in there that is multifaceted and looking at a number of things. If you're going to do entirely organic, what I recommend is that you have a social campaign, a strategic social campaign where you know when you're posting, how often you're posting, those sorts of things. You have an outreach campaign where you are contacting supporters and people who you know can show up and support you on your launch day. You have influencers, hopefully, in your space who who can help get the message out to a broader audience and help you to really widen your reach. And then, it never hurts to send out a press release. I discourage sending out a national press release. It's probably something that's going to get missed. What you should do is you should do a targeted press release to local media or specific media where people or people who know people or that they will be interested in that topic. And you need to make it media worthy for them, which means why now? Why should they cover it? They're going to be wondering, will people pay attention? Will this get clicks? Will this get readers? You need to be able to answer that question for them as well as possible so that you can actually get a bite on that, because they love it when you just tee up content for them, because that's their job. They're constantly having to find relevant content and come up with content all the time. So if you can help make their job easier, they're going to love it. So that's how you have to look at doing a press release. And then, you really would benefit from getting on some podcasts too. So if you know anybody who does a podcast, reach out. When I launched my first book, I think I did 8 different podcast interviews before my book came out. And then that generated SEO. It generated, me going into all these different people's audiences and everything, so that by the time the book came out, I had that much more reach. I had increased my followership as well through that. So those are just a few organic things that you can do if you're looking for a way to get on podcasts. If you're like, I don't even know anybody who does any one of these, there are podcast matching platforms out there that you can sign up for. Pod Match is a good example of one that does not cost an arm and a leg, and you can get on different podcasts that way. So that's a great idea of a route to go. But just like you see the big dogs, doing these book tours when they release, why would you not try to emulate parts of that or the concept of that with your book release as well? If you just put it out there next week, nobody knows what it is. Nobody knows what it's about. Nobody knows it's out there. I promise you, this is a very noisy world with people creating AI books left and right. There's more stuff getting published through these platforms than ever before. There are more books being published every single day than ever before. So what is going to help you cut through the noise so that when you publish, you don't just get buried in the noise and listen to nothing but crickets? So, that's really all that I have to say on that topic. A book is a big project. It's a big deal. It represents you. It represents your name. It should help you be credible. If you don't do it right, it can undermine your credibility, and it can actually be worse than you publishing, nothing at all in the first place. I would rather people, if they're going to do a haphazard job, I would rather they not publish anything, because it does more to damage your credibility and your reputation than it does to help it if you don't do it the right way. And then, of course, don't find yourself on the 10-yard line just rushing the ball, having absolutely no play for how you're going to get it into the end zone. It's not wise. It's driven by emotion, sometimes anxiety, fatigue, those sorts of things. That is not the time where you want to cut corners. That is the time where you really, really need to make sure that all that work that led up to it was worthwhile. As we always invite everybody, if you have any questions or anything, we'd love for you to reach out to us. Both Jonathan and I are on Facebook. Last name is Lautermilch, Lautermilch. You can drop in our DMs. We always love to hear from folks. You can also find us at smartpublishingservices.com. I myself am at Renee at smartpublishingservices.com. Always love to get here and answer questions from listeners and folks out there who are working on or thinking about working on a book. We are here for you. So that is everything that I have for this week. I believe next time we're going to come back with a guest episode. So stay tuned for more. And as always, like I always say, keep writing your story because the world needs your voice, but just make sure you do it the right way.